Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. We are officially live streaming and recording. Welcome to the Children's Services Council public meeting for financial auditing services. At this time, we will start with a few words from our Executive Director, Ms. Sika Green, regarding the financial auditing services RFP.
Thank you so much, Dina. So good afternoon, everyone joining us in person and via live stream. First, we want to thank our committee for doing the evaluations for us. Just for the record, this is for financial auditing services for the Children's Services Council. We're looking to have those services done from May of 2021 through the end of last fiscal year, which would have been September 30, 2022, with the option of, depending on how things go, of extending the contract for another year. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Snyder and we will get moving.
And I apologize, I did not note the time that we called the meeting to order, and that was at 2:02 p.m. And we'll make that note and put it on the record. At this time, we'll transition to roll call. For purposes of roll call, I would like to ask our solicitation committee team members to introduce themselves. And for the record, I would like to state that while we are all present as a committee team members, we do have Mr. Luis Camejo participating virtually. Thank you, Mr. Camejo, for still allowing for your schedule to meet with us, despite the fact that you had an emergency personal matter and could not be here in person. For the record, if you don't mind stating your name and your background, and we will get started at the end of the table.
Rob Renton, the CEO of Wakeman, Harris, and CarePoint.
Danielle Freed, Leon County Government Financial Operations and Compliance Manager for HSCB.
Mr. Camejo?
Yes, hi, good afternoon. I'm Luis Camejo, Internal Audit Manager for the clerk.
I turned it up.
Do you hear me?
Yes, better now, yes. Thank you very much for that. We will now transition to the approval of the agenda. You will see the agenda before you. Prior to us approving it, we would like to make one edit, and we would like to add one item. Right after we have item 5, we would like to add identifying a spokesperson that will serve in the capacity of whatever the final recommendation is from the solicitation team to be able to participate or represent himself as the signature for that actual recommendation. And I would like to ask our team now if there's anybody that would like to volunteer to be the spokesperson for the solicitation committee.
It's a very easy responsibility.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Rob Renzi. I appreciate that. And so at this time, with that added item to the agenda, I would like to request a motion for approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. We have Mr. Renzi motion and Mr. Camejo second. And at this time, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. At this point, the agenda is approved. We would like to request general public comment. Ms. Clay, is there any public comment at this time? There's no public comment. Thank you very much. We now move to the part of the agenda where we will be actually reviewing the RFP responses for review and ranking. At this time, along with the agenda before you, you will have your individual score sheets as well as the combined score sheets from the group. And we will be going through each one of the categories so that we can go ahead and have discussions in regards to the process for your scoring, why you determined that the score was higher or lower. And at any point during the discussion, if you have any changes or would like to make any edits to the score that you initially provided, you are able to do so. You can make those notations on your specific digital score sheet, and by the end of the meeting, we will actually collect those and we will be able to add them as public record for our meeting. We received 3 responses for our financial auditing services. One of them was from James Moore. The second was from Purvis Gray, and the third response was from Thomas Howell Ferguson. Does anybody have any questions thus far as we're moving along?
I just purposes of anyone viewing, that what's being shared on the screen is also uploaded on the CSC website under public information as meeting materials for this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nabila. And one of the things, the purpose and one of the purposes for this meeting is for us to be able to reach a consensus to see if we would like to move forward to make a recommendation for award. That recommendation will be formalized in writing by our CSC Leon staff, and it will be presented to our general counsel by our executive director, Ms. Sika Green, at our next meeting on January 9th. So with that, 19th, yes, I apologize. I missed the team in front of that, January 19th. And with that, we will get started with James Moore and the first category. The first category is experience, qualifications, and references. Would anybody like to discuss their scoring at this time? Does anybody have any additional comments that they would like to make in regards to the scoring? Okay. We will move to the next category under the same response for James Moore, and it is for proposed pricing. I apologize. The total available points was 30. The highest score was a 25 and the lowest was 23. Would any member of the solicitation committee like to make any comments in regards to their score?
Yeah, I wanted to say that James Moore, they did an outstanding job in their presentation. I think it was potentially the most professional presentation. However, the pricing was high and higher than the other two. And I'm not sure, like towards the end of their presentation, they said that if the price is too high, we could always go back and try to renegotiate. And so this is more of a question. Is that something that we should take into account, or are we taking the price that they quoted as the final price?
So Mrs. Snyder, let me jump in and answer. So that is actually a very good question. Because this was done as a request for proposal, there is not a period of negotiation. So the thought is that because it's an RFP, you give us your best price in that RFP. Had this been an ITN, then there is the ability to have some sort of negotiation. But the other piece of this that's important to note is that if you look at the number of points that were awarded to each category, the proposed pricing was the highest number of points. You could get almost 30. So that is actually a part of how the proposals were judged. And so the simple answer is no, there is not an opportunity for that price to be negotiated or adjusted. Great question.
Do we have any additional comments by any members of our solicitation team? Yeah. And
I would say he's correct, especially the first year audit price, which you didn't distribute money. It should not be, I didn't think it should be as high as every other year. So that is why they scored the lowest for me in price. And on the first category, I didn't say anything, but one of your categories was diversity. There wasn't any. Not just James Moore. There simply wasn't any.
And you're providing that comment, excuse me, Dina, you're providing that comment for all three?
All three.
Okay. And we want to note that from all three.
And I will share that we had 2 members of our committee that did provide written comments, even though they were not required, they were provided. So those will become part of the public record and will be provided to the public at the end of this meeting, along with your digital scoring sheets. Now that we have concluded the discussion in regards to the submission from James Moore, is there any member of the solicitation committee that is thinking or would like to make any changes to their original score? We'll note that there are no changes at this time as it pertains to the response from James Moore. We will move over on to our second respondent. This would be Purvis Gray, and we will review the same categories. The first category being experience, qualifications, and reference. Would any solicitation team member like to make any comments in regards to the scoring? The points available were 20. The lowest score was a 17. The highest score was an 18. No comments in this area. We will move to the second category, and this is again proposed pricing. The total points available was 30. The highest points awarded was 28. The lowest was 20. Would any solicitation team member like to provide any comments in regards to their scoring in this category?
I personally scored lower just because I felt like it wasn't as detailed as the other descriptions on the proposed pricing. So I felt like there was more, it was just really vague. So that's why I scored lower on that one.
Thank you. Any additional comments from any committee members? Okay. Now that we have concluded the discussion, is there any committee member that would like to make any changes to their original scoring sheets? There are no changes being proposed to by any of the team members to their original score. So the scoring for Purvis Gray will remain as originally stated. We will now move to our third and final respondent. This is Thomas Howell Ferguson. We will review the same categories. The first category being experience, qualifications, and reference. Does any solicitation committee team member have any comments that they would like to share in regards to their scoring? The points available again were 20. The highest score was an 18. The lowest was a 16.
Well, I would say I scored them the lowest. Just because they have, so I believe James Moore has actually done a CSC before. Purvis has done like the CSC, say member agency, but not a CSC. And Thomas L. Ferguson has not done any of them, which is why I scored them on, basically just ranked them 1, 2, 3 based on that.
Would any other team member like to make any comments in regards to their scoring? Okay. At this time, we will move to our final category for Thomas Howell Ferguson, and it is proposed pricing. The points available, once again, were 30. The highest points awarded were 26, and the lowest was 24. Does any solicitation committee member want to make any comments in regards to their scoring? No comments made by our solicitation team. At this time, does any team member want to make any changes to their original scores? There are no changes being proposed to the original scores. At this time, the original scoring for Thomas Howell Ferguson will remain the same. Thank you all for the discussion and your participation. At this time, we are moving to the solicitation team recommendation part of our agenda. As I stated at the beginning, one of the goals from this meeting is to determine if the solicitation team members can come to a consensus and move forward with recommending one respondent to present before the council for consideration of award. As the spokesperson, Mr. Renzi, I will start with you, and we can have a discussion as to whether there is a consensus from the team to making a recommendation.
I'm just going to judge it based on the way you weighted it, with price being more weighted than experience. So for price, clearly, Purvis Gray was the lowest price. I think all three of them could do the job. It's what they do. But Purvis Gray has the best price. James Moore has the most experience. And then but the combined scores, Thomas Alva then has the highest scores. So it's a no lose. It really is just about what is the priority of the council or the board. Is it sheer just whatever we can do the cheapest?
So I think what I will say to that is, so I want to be sure that I say this the correct way. The years that were outlined to be audited in this RFP were years where literally there was money coming in and no major amount of money going out. So our first year, we had no ad valorem tax revenue at all. The second year, we had the ad valorem tax revenue, and the largest amount that was expended was for summer funding, 1.5 million. And by the end of that year, we had about 4.8 million left in the bank. As we move forward into future years, and I mean future years, we expect that community investment is going to increase, and it will increase to more agencies. But we don't expect it to increase exponentially during the purview of this RFP. So that would be the past year, the current year, and the future year, just given the way that we're going to be setting our award cycles up. So I think by saying that, what I hope I'm doing is giving you information on how the finances will look as far as money coming in and money going out, and maybe it will help you to determine what your individual recommendation would be given the scoring. Because if I'm not mistaken, our RFP also states that the lowest score may not necessarily, the highest score may not necessarily be the recommendation of the evaluation committee. So the expectation is that you all have read those proposals and you have scored according to your expertise, and then according to your measures, provide that recommendation. So I don't know if that helps.
Well, let's see what the other people have to say.
Okay. Ms. Breed, Mr. Camejo?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question first. Looking at the scores for each of these three auditing firms, I'm wondering if someone, well, I can't see them anymore, but I was wondering why for Purvis there's such a big gap between the scoring and the pricing. We'll see that for the most part, the scoring on any other auditing firm is pretty consistent, but for Purvis, we have, I cannot see it any longer, but I believe that is a 28, 27, and 20 for pricing. So I was wondering, whoever scored that 20, if they could go into a little bit more detail and explain why that such a low score was given for that.
Sure. So I was the one that scored the 20. Let me pull up my notes here. So as far as I kind of weighted everything. So I put it into 3 different categories. So clear and specific detailed pricing. I felt like they were less detailed. So I gave them I did 10 for each. And I felt like it was a 6 out of 10 for me for that one. Just because the other 2 provided a lot more detail in their pricing. I just felt like it was less, you just got less information. It was super vague. As far as reasonability of pricing, gave it a 7 out of 10. I mean, it was I think I had so my question was, is that considered an all-inclusive pricing? Because it was so much lower than the competitors. I just felt like there was, and again, it was vague. So I questioned that a little bit. And then finally, do I think they're reputable and do I think they could do the job? Yeah. I mean, again, it was kind of that 7 out of 10 kind of went across the board on that one because I felt like they could do the job. So that's kind of why I scored it a 20. I just felt like it was less than what the others provided.
Okay, thank you. I feel pretty much the same way. I think that either of the 3 firms could do the job. They have enough experience to do it, and the type of financial auditing that they're going to be performing is kind of similar, and it's pretty standard in terms of what they would be doing. So in that sense, I think any of the 3 firms would do. In terms of just looking at how professional they are in providing these quotes, I would probably lean more towards Thomas. They have experience. They've been working already with the county. I think that they have the right people and experience to do this type of work. In terms of the pricing, there's a big difference between what they charge and what Purvis would charge. So when it comes to pricing, I'm right now in between Purvis or Thomas. That would be my where I am right now.
And I agree with that. I think that those would be one of the 2 that I would pick. And again, I think we're kind of back to what Mr. Renzi said at the beginning. It's experience over pricing.
So just as a clarification, because pricing was, so it kind of goes back to the ITN question. Because pricing was a heavy part of the scoring, then it had your scores in that area should have some weight.
Mhm.
So let me say it that way. Because it was a part of the scoring, then those scores should have some weight in your decision-making and recommendation.
Can somebody provide a little bit more detail as to the scope of the audit that they're going to be performing? Like, I understand that it's a financial audit, but if you could provide a little more detail on that.
So regarding the work that they will be doing,
Yes.
so it was detailed, of course, in the RFP, but literally for the first audit that they will perform will be from May of 2021 to September of 2021. We had no revenue during that time. The second scope will be for last fiscal year, which would be October 1, 2021 to September 30, 2022. We did have some revenue, but most of the expenditures were office set up, bringing the executive director on board. We brought team members on board, just basically setting things up. And then we did have one procurement where we dispersed $1.5 million. So those are the 2 main pieces that they would do. There is an option to move it into year 3, which would be the current fiscal year. And then we could even look at possibly year 4, although our council really feels that best practice would be to do another procurement right about that time.
Okay, so having said that, I take it that the scope of the audit is very limited, especially for year 1 and year 2. So then I would lean more towards Purvis as opposed to anyone else, solely based on the price, because they all have the experience, they all could do the job. And number year, you said that there was no revenue, which means that the scope of the audit is going to be very limited. Can you not hear me well?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, given that year 1 there was not revenue, so the scope of the audit is going to be very limited. And then year 2 there was little revenue, so the scope of that audit is going to also be kind of limited. So I would lean more towards Purvis as opposed to paying higher prices for a limited scope audit.
And one of the things that I would like to share with the solicitation committee is that one of the options present today as well is the ability to be able to reject all. So if you did not feel that the respondents provided enough information or that the scope of work that was expected and asked by the CSC was presented in their proposals, then there is the ability to be able to reject all, which would allow and have CSC Leon republished again for the RFP and request additional respondents.
And then the last thing I want to add, again, I have to emphasize that pricing was a part. And so when you're looking at the respondent under all the parts, and when you look at the total score for the first respondent, it was 73. You look for the total score for the second, it was 75. You look at the total score for the third, it was 76. So if you're using pricing, which is one of these, so you can either use the total scores. If you're not going to use the total scores, then you have to have a really good reason not to go with that scoring, even though we say in the RFP, you don't necessarily have to pick that. There has to be a really good reason not to do that. So when I look at the scores in totality, I think it's clear that there is one respondent that scored highest.
So can we all agree? I remember James Moore, their price was equal, right, across all three. I don't have the RFP in front of me, but I think their price was like 22, 22, 22, something that was consistent across all three, which is why I think I scored them the lowest.
Yeah, they were 22, 23, and 25.
So to do an audit from May to September with no revenue and cost $22,000, that makes no sense to me. And just in full disclosure, I've used as the CEO both James Moore and Thomas Alvarez. But I think their price is by far the highest. So is the group comfortable of just Xing them out?
I agree.
Sir, yourself?
Mr. Camejo?
Yes, a specific question on anything?
So can we rule out James Moore and Company? Are you comfortable just saying that we're going to narrow it down?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so we're limited. So now it's between the two. There's a 1 point difference in the totals.
Yes, and again, my score was lower on purpose grade just because, again, the information they provided was less. I feel that they could do probably just as well of a job based on their proposal. But as far as scoring goes, that's why I scored them where they are. So it wasn't necessarily me feeling like that they couldn't do it or that they were any less capable.
You were scoring them on what was
Yes, I was scoring them
That's
on-
what
yeah.
you're.
Yeah, on
That's what
exactly the content in
charged with doing.
comparison to the other content that was presented. I just felt like it was vague.
May I ask the difference between prices?
Sure.
Because I just don't.
So the schedule of professional fees, so the first was 10,500.
And who are you talking about?
This is purpose.
10,500?
Yeah, and then 19, and then 19,500.
And then for the other?
The other one, last page here, they have 20 for the first, 22, and 25.
So having said that, I would say that my reason for going with Purvis would be almost a $10,000 difference in auditing CSC for 4 months in the first year.
And
And I can't justify the extra 10,000.
And also to add to that, I feel like they were the only ones that took that into consideration with pricing. I feel like everybody else, it was kind of, $2,000 here, $2,000 there. I feel like they really took into account that it really was, half a year or less.
So may I ask, hold on, so may I ask the question, with your reasoning for your scoring with Purvis, did that play into your score?
Originally, no. When I first saw the pricing, no. I was strictly going off of the content that they provided. So I was not going off of, if I look at the fact that you're going, a couple months versus a full year, that makes a huge difference. And as Rob said, their score is, or their pricing leans more towards that than any of the other candidates.
And if I may, to one of the points that you made earlier, one of the questions you had was, is their pricing all-encompassing
Yes.
because it was so much lower than everybody else? And the answer would be yes, because of the fact that this is an RFP. They are stating in essence that they are going to do the scope of work presented in the RFP or in for that total amount that they provided. So that would be the total that would be paid to them for all the work for all the out of years.
So so I'm going to ask for a clarifying question because Ms. McPhail normally serves as our procurement manager. Although for this one, Dina is, Ms. Snyder is the procurement manager, but I want to default and ask a question because we've gone through the agenda and there was a point when we asked if people wanted to change their score, giving the conversation. This conversation that just occurred did not happen prior. But I think it's clear to me that it could possibly influence someone maybe wanting to change their scoring. So where would we land
So you
at
are,
that point?
I'm making sure that I'm on camera, so in case anybody wants to see me.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Holland McPhail. So the answer is yes. At any point during this is an open discussion. A recommendation has not been formulated. But once we leave this meeting, your score sheets become final. So if at any point in thinking through, for example, the comparative scoring for pricing for one over the other, if you wanted to, if anybody, any of the three of the solicitation committee members wanted to change their pricing scores to reflect the conversation that we've just had, you're absolutely permitted to do so. And the only other thing I just wanted to add, and I brought it up on the screen for just a moment, is that we did a question and answer period. And so the scope isn't, when we say just kind of auditing the income and expenses, there's a couple of additional pieces that part of that audit they'll be involved with. So experience really will play a role here. I'm going to use some terms, I'm going to say them. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what they mean in full speak, but like the helping to make adjustments and recording them in accordance with the laws with the GASB.
So if they find an audit error, journal entries, that's what that means.
And so that it was making the adjustments, but then there's a couple of other, like preparing, I think it's a CAFR, and there's a couple of other things that were involved with it that helped spell out the scope of the work a little bit more beyond just like a desk. It's not just a desk audit.
Right.
This is the point. But I just wanted to say that to Mr. Amijo's comment earlier about it being a little bit more encompassing. So I just wanted to share that.
Right. It is a standard financial audit that that the chosen company would be required to do.
Okay, so with that being said then, and after the conversation that we've had, I would like to change my scoring on the proposed pricing for Purvis Gray. So currently it's at a 20. I would say that based on what we've discussed, I would give it a 26. And now knowing that it does include everything.
Do some quick math here.
Oh, you're fine.
So those scores, I'm just going to help out a little bit because Dina's doing the math. So those scores now reflect for Mr. Comejo, 28 under proposed pricing for Purvis Gray. For Mr. Renzi, 27. And for Mrs. Freed, 26.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the total for that would be, I was an English major.
81.
Thank you. And of course, we'll change the corresponding percentage there. And our new score would be?
Yeah, I didn't hear what the total score is going to be now for Purvis.
133.
133.
Okay.
Mhm. then that would put them
In the lead.
5 points.
Yes. I would put them in the lead.
So I would motion that our recommendation be purpose gray.
We have a motion. Apologize, I was still trying to do my math calculations. We have a motion by our Mr. Renzi to move forward with recommending Purvis Gray. Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays, say aye as well. We have no nays, so at this time, the solicitation committee team is making the recommendation to move forward with recommending award to Purvis Gray for financial auditing services of CSC Leon County.
Is there gonna be any evaluation of their work performed once they conduct their audit?
I'm sorry, I was doing some calculations. Please say that again.
Yes, will there be any type of evaluation once they complete the first, second, and third audits?
Yes, but more than likely, because it will be a 3-year audit, we will go back out for RFP anyway to stay in, not compliance, but with best practices. Our council really doesn't want us to have any one auditing firm or CPA firm do our audits more than 3 consecutive years. So there would be some sort of evaluation. We don't have anything formal in place right now. However, even with that evaluation, we more than likely will go back out for RFP again.
Thank you.
Is there a chance it could be ITN next time?
There is a chance it could be ITN.
Just that.
And to be very honest, by that time we'll have 2 good years. We don't really count that first year, but 2 good years. 2 good years behind our belt, and probably an ITM would be a preferred way to do that. This time, the council settled on an RFP because the auditing services would be fairly common. There wouldn't be anything that would be a value added or an extra or anything that they could identify.
We'll now move to the point on the agenda for any additional team member comments. Do any of our solicitation committee team members have any additional comments that they would like to share? No additional comments. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to our executive director so she can close us out with the financial auditing services of the RFP.
So there's not much left to say other than thank you very much to all 3 of you for doing this and to do it over the holidays. We absolutely appreciate that. So the committee, the staff will formulate the committee recommendation, and we will put that in our agenda for January 19th. Mr. Renzi, as the appointed spokesperson, we will reflect that in the recommendation as well as in the packet. And we just ask that you possibly be available if council members might have any questions.
Do you know what time that one is?
It is on January 19th at 4 o'clock. 3 o'clock. We're going early. No, you're right. We're going early to 3 o'clock.
Do you know where it is?
It will be here, and you
Like
can't
where on the
zoom in.
agenda? I have a 4 to 5, so I can come early or I can be here late.
So let's say this, we can formulate it, and if we need to make sure that you're available. Perfect. So we'll make sure that we get that on the agenda between 3 and 4. You may zoom in if for some reason you can't be here.
Yeah, I can, this other's Zoom, so I can Zoom from anywhere.
Okay, and we will also pass the recommendation by you for your review before we. And that
Are
is
you
it.
keeping these?
Yes, we will need to keep your score sheets.
And especially for the ones where changes were made.
Yes,
exactly.
We want to keep that one. So thank you all so very much. I would like to, again, thank you for your commitment to the whole process.
I know you got plenty of emails from me trying to get us all squared away and scheduled, and you all were so very responsive and available. So thank you so much. At this time, we will adjourn the meeting, noting that the time is 2:41 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr.